Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Diksha Online. Today, we are going to learn the synopsis of amines, coordination compounds, and biomolecules. Preparation of amines starting from alkyl halides. So, alkyl halides are reacted with ammonia to give various amines. So, first it can form primary amine with HCl or HX in general. Then RNH2 formed further react with RX to form secondary amine, and the secondary amine formed further react with alkyl halide to form tertiary amine, and finally the alkyl halide can react even with tertiary amine forming quaternary ammonium salt. So this reaction is known as Hoffman exhaustive alkylation. So generally amines are reacted with excess of alkyl halide to get quaternary ammonium salts. So we can prepare primary, secondary and tertiary amine. Not a suitable method to prepare primary amine, but definitely a suitable method to prepare quaternary ammonium salt. Reduction from nitro compounds. Both aliphatic and aromatic nitro compounds on reduction with tin and HCl or iron and HCl or even tin and HCl and iron and HCl can give RNH2. Same way, nitrobenzene can be reduced to aniline. Starting from nitrobenzene with tin HCl, iron HCl or even zinc HCl can give aniline. So if I have dinitro compound, so let us say 1 comma 3 dinitrobenzene. If I react this with tin and HCl, I will get both nitro group converted to NH2 group. But if I want to selectively reduce one of the nitro group, I can use ammonium hydrogen sulfide or even ammonium sulfide as a reducing agent. Then one of the nitro group becomes NH2, other one remains as NO2. So ammonium hydrogen sulfide or ammonium sulfide is a selective reducing agent in dinitro compound to reduce only one of them. Third one, Gabriel phthalimide synthesis. So in this reaction, we take phthalimide. Because of two carbonyl group, the hydrogen atom is acidic. So when I react this with a base like KOH, it loses water, forms a potassium salt. So N minus K plus. Now this is a nucleophile. So I can carry out nucleophilic substitution with Rx. So this is SN2. So preferably primary alkyl halide or methyl halide. This N minus can attack R, X will go out. So I'll get what is called as N alkyl phthalimide. Now this N alkyl phthalimide, this is an amide function group. It is hydrolyzed in basic medium. So this will break and this will break. So it becomes RNH2 with byproduct being phthalic acid. So this phthalimide synthesis is suitable to prepare only primary aliphatic amine. Aromatic amine can't be prepared because aryl halides cannot undergo nucleophilic substitution easily. So this reaction is used to prepare primary aliphatic amines. Hoffman degradation reaction. So in this reaction, amide is taken, RC double bond O NH2 reacted with bromine and KOH. It results in the formation of aniline or any primary amine. Byproduct will be K2CO3, KBr and H2O. So this involves a rearrangement called as Hoffman rearrangement. And intermediate product will be isocyanate. Reduction of nitriles, Mendius reaction. So here it is just reduced in presence of hydrogen, nickel or palladium or platinum as catalyst. So it becomes RCH2NH2. So catalytic reduction of nitriles to primary amine is known as Mendius reduction. Then reduction of amides and oximes. So RC double bond O NH2. So we had learned this in previous session, previous um, chapter. So amides are reduced with lithium aluminum hydride to give primary amine but not alcohol. So it is going to form RCH2NH2. Same way, even oxime with lithium aluminum hydride, this will become RCr single bond NH2. So both oxime and amide on reduction will give amines. From Ritter reaction. This is a reaction specifically used to prepare 3-degree alkyl and 1-degree amine, like tertiary butyl amine. So initially what we do, we take any reaction which can produce stable tertiary carbocation. Let us say I am taking alkene and H plus. This will give me tertiary butyl carbocation. Or I can use even tertiary butyl alcohol with H2SO4. So any reaction which can produce a stable 3-degree carbocation is used, and the reactants are mixed along with a nitrile. So if I take the next step of the reaction, the tertiary carbocation formed reacted with a nitrile. So nitrogen lone pair being a nucleophile attacks the carbocation. So I'll get the plus on this. So now it is hydrolyzed. Water will attack carbon. Electron pair goes to nitrogen. So I'll get so this can tautomerize. So now this is nothing but an amide. It is hydrolyzed further to give tertiary alkyl primary amine with a carboxylic acid. So I'll take in the next slide. So the amide formed is hydrolyzed in basic medium. So byproduct is RCO minus, and I'll get tertiary butyl and primary amine. This is a specific reaction for preparing 3-degree alkyl and 1-degree amine. So moving to properties, basic nature of amines. So amines are basic due to the lone pair of nitrogen present on due to the lone pair of electrons present on nitrogen. So if I take RNH2, so this can be a Lewis base, and also it can accept a proton to become RNH3 plus. So this will be showing Bronsted basic behavior. So amines are both Lewis base as well as Bronsted base. If I take ammonia and alkylamine. So in ammonia there is no group to increase the electron density, but in alkylamine there is an R group which can increase the electron density on nitrogen. So generally alkylamines are more basic. That is due to plus I effect. Plus I effect of alkyl group increases the basic strength. So if I take the order of basic strength due to plus I effect, then it should be R3N tertiary amine greater than R2NH greater than RNH2 greater than ammonia. This is due to plus I effect, the basic strength of various amines. But the basic strength is not same as in gaseous phase and aqueous phase. So whatever we wrote now, that is in gas phase. In gas phase, the basic strength is 3 degree greater than 2 degree greater than 1 degree greater than ammonia. In aqueous phase, it is not only the electron density on nitrogen, because in aqueous phase the electron pair is already accepted a proton, it will be Arrhenius base. So what happens is RNH2 in water becomes RNH3OH, which can dissociate to give RNH3 plus plus OH minus. The Kb value will decide the basic strength, and the Kb value depends on the stability of the conjugate acid. So in aqueous phase we have the 3 conjugate acids like RNH3 plus, then that is primary, this is secondary ammonium ion, and this is tertiary ammonium ion. Okay, so the stability of the ammonium ion decided by 2 factors. One is hydrogen bonding, other one is plus I effect. If you take plus I effect, 3 degree should be greater stability, then 2 degree, then 1 degree. If I take hydrogen bonding, there are 3 NH bonds in primary, 2 NH bonds in secondary, and only 1 NH bond in tertiary. So more number of hydrogen bonds are possible for primary, stability is more for it. So if I take both factors, the overall stability of amines in aqueous phase is always 2 degree greater than 1 degree greater than 3 degree for methylamines, and 2 degree greater than 3 degree greater than 1 degree for other alkyl amines. So for methylamine only, primary is more than tertiary. For all others, tertiary is more than primary. But in all the cases, secondary is more basic than other two amines. In case of arylamine and alkylamine, so arylamine means aniline, RNH2, and ammonia. All three you can take. So in arylamine, the lone pair is delocalized. So it is not easily available and it is involved in resonance. In alkyl amine, there is a plus I effect, increase the electron density. In ammonia, no plus I, no R effect. So as a result, the aryl amines are always less basic than ammonia. Alkyl amines are always more basic than ammonia. So order would be RNH2 greater than NH3 greater than aniline. Further, for basic strength, presence of electron releasing group and electron withdrawing group will affect the basic strength. So generally, electron releasing group increase the basic strength, electron withdrawing group decrease the basic strength. We have two more types of amine, that is aralkylamine and N-alkylarylamine. If I take aralkylamine is like benzylamine, CH2NH2. So it is an aromatic amine, but nitrogen is not directly bonded to benzene ring. So lone pair is not in resonance. This is more than ammonia, but less than alkylamine because benzene ring act as a minus I group. So this is more than ammonia. And if I take N-alkyl arylamine, so this is again like arylamine because nitrogen is directly bonded to benzene ring, lone pair is a part of resonance, but it is more than aniline because the additional alkyl group present which will increase the basic strength. So the overall strength of basic strength of all amines. So highest would be alkylamine, then aralkylamine, then ammonia, then N-alkyl arylamine, and finally aryl amine. This is the overall order of basic strength of all various types of amines. Hinsberg test. The Hinsberg reagent is benzene sulfonyl chloride. So it is PHSO2Cl. The moment we react any amine, if I take a primary amine or NH2, so it will lose HCl. It is like acylation reaction. It's a nucleophilic acyl substitution like acid chloride. Here it is sulfonyl chloride. So HCl is going out. We get PHSO2 NHR. So there is a hydrogen present in it. So this is a precipitate. This is called as sulfonamide. N-alkyl sulfonamide. So this precipitate dissolves in KOH. It gets dissolved. Because of acidic hydrogen present, it becomes a salt. PHSO2 N minus R and K plus. Because of this, salt gets dissolved in water. So primary amine gives a white precipitate which is soluble in concentrated base. If I go for secondary amine, again same reagent PHSO2Cl. I am taking R2NH. Now again HCl is eliminated, so I will get PHSO2 N R, R. So I'll get N comma N dialkyl sulfonamide. So this is also a precipitate. But there is no hydrogen with this. When you add KOH, it will be insoluble. So when I take the amine, add Hinsberg reagent, and if I get a white precipitate which is insoluble in a strong base, then it is going to be secondary amine. If I take the tertiary amine, PHSO2Cl plus R3N. There is no hydrogen with amine, so there is no precipitation. There is no reaction. So no sulfonamide formation. So if I take a amine sample, add Hinsberg reagent, if I don't get a precipitate, then it is going to be tertiary amine. So like this we can differentiate between primary, secondary and tertiary amine using Hinsberg reagent. Carbyl amine reaction. In this reaction, we take a primary amine, react this with chloroform and KOH or NaOH. So we are going to get isocyanide plus KCl and H2O. So this is called as carbyl amine. So it is identified by its foul smell. Okay, so what is the reaction mechanism? It is comparable with the reaction what we have studied in phenols, that is Rimmer-Tiemann reaction. So here also same intermediate. So CHCl3 with OH minus. So OH minus takes the proton, at the same time one Cl goes out. So minus water minus Cl minus forms dichlorocarbene. Dichlorocarbene is a electrophile. So RNH2 is present in the medium. So RNH2 plus CCl2. So this lone pair is taken by carbon. So it becomes RNH, H, single bond C, Cl, Cl. This is having plus, this is having minus. So there is a loss of proton. So this proton will be lost. What do we get? I'll write in the next slide. I'll get RNH, C, Cl, Cl. The lone pair will be there. Lone pair is also here, minus charge. Now this lone pair will push the chlorine outside. So I'll get RNH double bond C, Cl. This gets a plus charge again. So this electron pair is coming back to nitrogen. Loss of proton. So Rn double bond C, single bond Cl. You have a lone pair and a negative charge on nitrogen and lone pair on nitrogen. So the lone pair goes and another chlorine is also pushed out of the molecule to form finally isonitrile. Plus on this, the lone pair will still remain on carbon, so it will have a formal negative charge. This is the mechanism of carbylamine reaction. Reaction with nitrous acid. One of the important reaction, we have different categories. So all mechanism is same. So if I take NaNO2 and HCl produces HNO2. Okay. So HNO2 structure, O double bond N, single bond OH, and in presence of acid medium, the OH minus will be taken and goes out as water, producing nitrosonium ion as the electrophile. Now the primary amine are NH2. plus nitrosonium ion. So lone pair of nitrogen is taken by this nitrogen. So what do we get? RNH single bond N double bond O. This will get a positive charge. So positive charge on nitrogen will lose the proton. So this will become RNH single bond N double bond O. And this can undergo tautomerization. N double bond N single bond OH. Now since acidic medium is present, the OH can get protonated. So if I write that step, so you have N double bond N single bond OH. In presence of H plus, the OH can get protonated, double bond NOH2 plus. Now the lone pair here will move and moves the leaving group outside. So I'll get diazonium ion. So in case of alkyl diazonium ion, it is unstable, loses nitrogen immediately. So it becomes carbocation. The carbocation can be attacked by the water present in the medium. It's a dilute HCl I'm using. Plenty of water is present. So major product is going to be alcohol. Since we are using HCl, there will be some part of chloride ion. You can get even small amount of corresponding alkyl chloride. And alkyl carbocation can also give alkene as the minor product. So these two are minor and alcohol will be the major. So generally for aliphatic alcohols, we can assume with HNO2 it liberates nitrogen and forms the corresponding alcohol. Same way if I write for aromatic primary amine. So in case of aromatic primary amine, say aniline I am taking, the reaction goes in the same way, forming relatively more stable benzene diazonium chloride. So this salt is stable, diazonium ion is stable because of resonance from the benzene ring. As a result, this is much more stable than alkyl diazonium salt. It can be isolated. Now this process is known as diazotization. So diazotization is only for primary aromatic amine. It is only for 1 degree aromatic amine. So the aliphatic amine forming diazonium salt, but you can't isolate, it is forming alcohol, so I can't call that as diazotization. If I take secondary amine, it will stop at N-nitroso compound. So RNHR plus HNO2. So nitrosonium ion is going to form after loss of proton. This will stop at this particular step. So it cannot tautomerize to form OH. So it is always forming yellow oily layer of N-nitroso compound. So both aliphatic and aromatic secondary amine forms N-nitroso compound, which is an yellow oily layer. And tertiary aliphatic amine, so R3N can react with HNO2 directly to form R3NH plus NO2 minus. This is one type of salt possible. Also it can react directly with the nitrosonium ion. The lone pair can be given to nitrogen. So this can form one more type of salt like this. So two salts will dissolve in water to give a clear and colorless solution. So tertiary aliphatic amine gives clear colorless solution. tertiary aromatic amines. So if I take NCH3CH3, so if I take nitrosonium ion as the electrophile, so it is unable to attack nitrogen because of steric factors. It undergoes electrophilic aromatic substitution. So it is going to para position. So it is forming para nitroso N gamma N dimethyl aniline. So this is the reaction of all different types of amine with nitrous acid. So I'll repeat, primary aliphatic amine gives effervescence in the form of nitrogen gas and forms alcohol as a major product. Then primary aromatic amine gives relatively more stable benzene diazonium salt, and secondary aliphatic, secondary aromatic amine gives an yellow oily layer of N-nitroso compound. Then tertiary aliphatic amine gives a clear and colorless solution, and tertiary aromatic amine undergo para-nitrosonation reaction. So this is very important for any competitive examination. You need to know clearly. Synthetic application of diazonium salt. So these are the reactions which you need to remember. It will be used in interconversions. So if I take diazonium salt, we can replace the nucleophile by different groups, the diazo group by different nucleophiles. So first if I take halogen, so I'll write diazonium salt here, Cl minus. So for getting halogens, halobenzenes, so I can use Cu2Cl2 with HCl. So it gives chlorobenzene. Same way I can use, this is called as Sandmeyer reaction. Same way I can use Cu plus HCl. So I'll get same chlorobenzene. This is called as Gattermann reaction. So that is for chlorides or even bromides I can use. For iodides I use directly Ki, so I'll get iodobenzene. And for fluorides I have to use HBF4, so I'll get one more diazonium salt, N2 plus BF4 minus. On heating it forms fluorobenzene. So this is how we can convert the diazonium salt to all the halo compounds. I can get chlorobenzene, bromobenzene, iodobenzene and fluorobenzene. Same way we can replace it with other groups also. If I take benzene diazonium chloride again, so if I react now with just water, no other reagent, just water and warm, you get phenol. You use ethanol C2H5OH or H3PO2, you can reduce it to benzene. Ethanol is oxidized to acetaldehyde, H3PO2 is oxidized to H3PO3. And also we have, if I use CuCN and H plus, you get cyanobenzene. So advantage of getting cyanobenzene is if you hydrolyze this, you get benzoic acid. Okay, so these are some of the synthetic applications of diazonium salts. So we can replace the diazonium group by different groups. One more is also possible. So you can treat with first HBF4 and followed by NaNO2. You can convert diazonium salt into even nitrobenzene. So this is the synthetic application interconversions. We can use these steps as one of the steps in the interconversion process. Also, we have coupling reaction of diazonium salt. If I take diazonium salt, react this with N triple bond N plus, if I react this with highly activated ring like phenol and aniline, so it undergo coupling, so it is going to form dyes, azo dyes. This is the red colored dye what I get with phenol. Same way, the very famous red dye test, we take diazonium salt with beta naphthol. So diazonium salt plus beta naphthol with NaOH. So you get a red color dye. So beta naphthol is here. At alpha position you get the coupling reaction happening. This is the bright red dye what you get in red dye test. So these are the applications of diazonium salts. Reaction with carbon disulfide. This is specifically for primary amine. If I take RNH2, react this with CS2. So nitrogen is a nucleophile, carbon is electrophilic site, electron pair will go like this. So I'll get RNH and H with a positive charge, then C double bond S, single bond S minus. So this will lose a proton, S minus will gain a proton, it becomes RNH, single bond C, double bond S, single bond S, H. So this on treatment with HgCl2 and heat, it loses H2S. So it forms RN double bond C double bond S. So this is isothiocyanate. This is the functional group present in mustard oil. So it's also called as mustard oil reaction or Hoffman mustard oil reaction. So it will give isothiocyanate as the product. Hoffman elimination. So in case of Hoffman elimination, the given amine, let us say CH3CH2NH2, is first subjected to exhaustive methylation. It will give you quaternary ammonium salt. So CH3CH2N CH3 thrice plus. So this quaternary ammonium salt is reacted with AgOH and heated. So what happens? This is the quaternary ammonium ion, plus is there. So OH minus will take the beta hydrogen. This electron pair will go to form alkene and tertiary amine is eliminated. So I'll get alkene, that is ethene plus NCH3 thrice as the byproduct. So the Hoffman elimination, the concept is the regioselectivity is Hoffman rule. So that is least substituted alkene will be obtained as major product. That is in case of Hoffman elimination. So quaternary ammonium salts are heated with AgOH. It gives corresponding alkene. Very similarly, we have Cope elimination. In case of Cope elimination, we start the reaction with the tertiary amine. So tertiary amine, tertiary amine, a lone pair. This is treated with peroxy compound, either H2O2 or H2SO5, peroxy monosulfuric acid. So it will form corresponding, I'll write one R as CH2, CH3. So sorry, this is nitrogen and this is oxygen. Now amine oxide is formed, you have plus and you have minus. So this is going to be CH2H. So intramolecularly it will eliminate. This O minus will take the proton, this comes here and this goes to nitrogen. So we have a 5-membered cyclic intermediate. So it is going to be syn elimination reaction. Because of cyclic intermediate form, it will be syn elimination. So I'll get alkene, that is ethene, along with R2NOH. Disubstituted hydroxylamine is the byproduct. So the key points for syn elimination, cope elimination is its intramolecular elimination, then 5-membered cyclic transition state, and very importantly syn elimination. These are 3 points for cope elimination. Reduction of nitro compounds. So nitro compounds, there are reduction in different medium. So if I take the acid medium, so nitrobenzene, especially nitrobenzene. So nitrobenzene with tin HCl forms aniline, and also we did NH4SH forms aniline for one of the nitro group. So this reactant here is dinitrobenzene. So it becomes 1NO2 and 1 NH2. So for this is the reaction. So nitrobenzene with acid medium will give aniline as the product. If I take basic medium, there are 3 reactions in basic medium depending upon different reagents. So if I take glucose and NaOH, so it forms azoxybenzene. One of them will have a dative bond. It's called as azoxybenzene. Then with methanol and KOH, it forms azobenzene. And finally with concentrated NaOH with zinc. Here also we use zinc. With alcoholic KOH, here concentrated aqueous NaOH. So it will go one more step of reduction, forms NH with 2 benzene rings. So diphenyl hydrazine will be formed, or I can say hydrazobenzene. This is azobenzene. This can be called as hydrazobenzene. Hydrazobenzene. This is in basic medium. In neutral medium, NO2, zinc and NH4Cl. So it's going to form NHOH, phenyl hydroxylamine. This is in neutral medium. And in electrolytic medium, electrolytic conditions. So nitrobenzene in dilute acid electrolysis. Weak acidic medium, it gives aniline. Strong acidic medium and electrolysis gives para amino phenol. Para amino phenol. This is in electrolysis method. So nitro compounds can be reduced by electrolysis to give corresponding amines. Reduction of cyanides and isocyanides. So reduction of cyanide, RCN reduced, you get RCH2NH2, you get a primary amine, and RNC plus minus reduction, you get RNH CH3, you get a secondary amine. So cyanides will give primary amine, isocyanides will give secondary amine on reduction. Same way hydrolysis, RC triple bond N, hydrolysis in presence of H plus, so this will become RCOOH plus NH3. So triple bond completely breaks. Same way RNC, hydrolysis, it forms RNH2 plus HCOOH. So this is the product in case of hydrolysis of cyanides and isocyanides. So those are the points for nitrogen compounds. Now we'll move to coordination compounds. So coordination compound starts with what is called as molecular addition compounds. So there are two types, double salts and complex salts. Double salts are the molecular addition compounds which lose their identity in solution. So in solution state double salts are unknown. So example is potash alum, even more salt. Complex salts are the salts which are retaining their identity in solution. So complex salt exist in solid state as well as in solution state. They retain their identity. So complexes like potassium ferrocyanide, potassium ferricyanide, cuproammonium sulfate, all those comes under complex salts. Types of complexes, homoleptic complexes. These are made of only one type of ligands. Heteroleptic complexes are the complexes which contain more than one type of ligand, 2, 3, 4, whatever it can be. So example, you can see water and chlorine is present, here only ammonia is present as ligands. So homoleptic, only one type, heteroleptic, more than one type. IUPAC nomenclature of complexes. So in any IUPAC naming, always the cation is named first, followed by the name of the anion. So if a complex ion to be named, first we have to name the ligands, followed by the metal ion name. So when we have naming of ligands, we need to know some rules. Negative ligand name ends with O, like Cl minus become chloro, OH minus become hydroxido, hydroxide becomes hydroxido, chloride becomes chlorido, SO42 minus sulfate becomes sulfato, and so on. Neutral ligand name is retained as it is, with few ligands given some special names, like water is given as aqua, ammonia is given as amine, carbonyl group is called as carbonyl, carbon monoxide, nitric oxide is called as nitrosyl. Then positive ligand name ends with IUM. And if more than one ligand is present of same type, they are indicated by prefix like di, tri, tetra, etc. And if the ligands are complex ligands having these kind of names, the prefix like bis, tris, tetrakis are used. And if more than one ligand of different types are present, their names are written in alphabetical order. Then for naming the metal atom, for anionic complex, the name of metal atom is ending with the letter ATE and the Latin name to be used if the Latin name is applicable for the given metal. And for cationic complex, the name of the metal atom is retained as it is no Latin name to be used. And finally, the oxidation number of the metal ion is written immediately after the name of the metal atom. Isomerism in complexes. So complexes can show both structural as well as stereoisomerism. The structural isomerism type is ionization isomerism, hydrate isomerism, linkage isomerism, coordination isomerism. So we'll take one by one. Ionization isomerism. In case of ionization isomerism, complexes will have same molecular formula, but when they are dissolved in water, they are going to give different ions. So they are known as ionization isomers. For example, you can take Cr, H2O4, Cl2, NO3. Okay, so tetraamine dichlorochromium 3 nitrate. Same complex frame, HER, H2O4. I will take NO3 inside now, put chlorine outside. So when you dissolve this, you get nitrite ion, and dissolve this, you get chloride ion. So these two ions are obtained different along with one complex ion. As a result, these are called as ionization isomers. Hydrate isomerism. The complexes have same molecular formula but different number of water molecules in and outside the coordination sphere. So here what we happen, that is famous example, CO, H2O, 6, Cl3. This is the formula of the complex. It can exist in different forms. CO, all water as ligands, and all three chlorine outside, or CO, H2O5, Cl and Cl2. And finally CO, H2O4, Cl2 and Cl. So three complexes are possible which are having different number of water molecules acting as ligands. So in the first one, all 6 water molecules are ligand, 3 chloride ions are outside, and second one 5 water molecules acting as ligands, and the third one only 4 water molecules acting as ligands. These are hydrate isomers. Linkage isomerism. In this, the complexes will have same molecular formula but differ in the linkage between donor atom of ligand and the central metal atom. So for this isomerism to exist, the complex should have minimum of one ambidentate ligand. So example, if I take CO, H2O5, Cn, Cl2. Okay, same way CO, H2O5, I'll make this Cn as Nc and Cl. Everything is same, Cn has become Nc. So here the cobalt is bonded to carbon, in the second one cobalt is bonded to nitrogen. Coordination isomerism. So complex will have same molecular formula but different in the so this is not the definition, it's given the same as the previous slide. So actual difference here is you will have two ions, both ions are going to be complex ions. Let us say if I take Cr, NH3 6 and CO, Cn 6. So both the ions are complex ions. There will be exchange of ligands between the two central metal atoms. I can take Cr, NH3 5, Cn, and this will become CO, NH3, Cn 5. So I have exchanged one Cn minus among them. Then another possibility is Cr, NH3 4, Cn twice, then CO, NH3 twice, Cn 4. Like this, there will be exchange of ligands between two central metal atom. These are called as coordination isomers. Geometrical Geometrical isomerism in square planar complexes. So we can see clearly the square planar complexes like MA2B2, MA2BC, MABCD and MAB2 can show geometrical isomerism. So first we'll take MA2B2. So in case of MA2B2, you have square plane. This is central metal atom, 4 bonds. So I can put A one side, B one side. This will be cis. Same way, if I take M A opposite, B opposite, this will be trans. This for MA to B2. Same way for MA to BC. Instead of BB, it is BC. If I go for MABCD, there can be 3 different types of isomers. A, B, C, D. So I'll write the other one A, B, D, C. So I can see clearly A opposite to C, A opposite to D, then A opposite to B is not over. So A, B you put opposite, then C, D anywhere you can put. So these are the 3 possible isomers for M, A, B, C, D. MAB twice. AB means unsymmetrical bidentate ligand. So I'll take glycinate as the example. So if I take M, it's a square plane. So A and B. So you can see A on same side, B on same side. It is like a cis isomer. Then if I reverse one of them, AB, BA. So still the bond between AB is like this only, but position of the donor atoms is opposite, so it will be trans. Like that, geometrical isomerism is possible in square planar complexes. Geometrical isomerism in octahedral complexes. Octahedral complexes can show more number of isomers. So I take MA4B2. So it is going to be square plane, M, one above, one below. So A4, A, 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 then B and B. So this is like this. If A and B are opposite, B and B are opposite, all A on one square plane, and A opposite, A opposite, B opposite. This is trans. So MA4B2 you can have cis and trans isomers. Then MA3B3. In case of MA3B3, I have facial and meridional isomerism. So what is this facial meridional isomerism? So if I take the square planar complex, this is the square plane, M at the center, and this is the apex. So MA3B3, if I put A, B, B. If you see carefully, these are present along one face of the octahedron. So this face of octahedron, all 3 A ligands are present, and this face you have all B's are present. This is facial isomer. Same way, if I take meridional isomer, the like ligands are present along meridian. So A, B, A, B. So AA is going to be meridional isomers. BB is also opposite. So it is meridional isomer. So this is possible only in MA3B3. If I take the further types, M, A, B, C, D, E, F. We can't write the isomers there. The number of isomers are many. So in theoretically, if I take, there is 15 possible isomers for M, A, B, C, D, E, F. Only 3 of them have been isolated. Now if I take the complex with bidentate ligands. So first one is M, A twice B2. So you have M, AA. So AA will come here, AA will come here. This is a symmetrical bidentate ligand, and B2 will be here. This is cis. And the trans will be like A, 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 A. This is the uh, cyclic ring, and 2B will be opposite to each other. This is trans. So MAA twice B2 will show geometrical isomers. Even MAB3 will show geometrical isomerism. So unsymmetrical bidentate ligand. So if I take, this is M, AB, 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 AB. So these are the 3 cyclic rings. This is cis. If I take trans, A, B, B, A, B. So BB opposite, AA opposite. So, but the ring is still the same. There is no change. This is trans. Only donor atoms are opposite, but the ring structure will still remain same. So these are the possibilities of geometrical isomers in octahedral complexes. Optical isomerism in octahedral complexes. Square planar complexes cannot show optical isomerism because square plane itself is a plane of symmetry. In case of octahedral complexes, the optical isomers are possible for, in types of monodentate ligand, only 2 types, Ma2B2C2 and MABCDEF. So Ma2B2C2, I'll write here. So MAABBCC. So this and its mirror image are enantiomers. They are not superimposable. This is cis. Cis isomer is optically active. Trans will be like meso compound because AA, BB, CC all are opposite to each other. So there is perfect plane of symmetry. It's going to be meso compound. In MABCDEF, again out of 15 geometrical isomers, each one has its own optical isomers. So 30 total optical isomers are possible, but hardly 3 into 2, 6 of them have been isolated. So third one will go for MAA thrice. In MAA thrice, you have AA, AA, AA. So ring is like this. If I take the mirror image, the ring come to the left. So if you try to superimpose, they will not superimpose. So all identical donor atoms, but the ring is becoming like this. So these are mirror images, but not superimposable. Same way, MAA2B2. So we had run cis and trans isomer for that. So cis is optically active, trans is optically inactive. So A, B, B. So this is the ring. So if I take the mirror image, A, B, B. So this is the ring. They are non-superimposable. mirror images. Same way, MAB thrice. MAA thrice can give, MAB thrice definitely shows optical isomerism. So both cis and trans are optically active. So AA, AB, AB, AB. The mirror image like this. AB, AB, AB. These are the mirror images. So both are optically active. Okay. So these are the types of isomers which can show optical isomerism in octahedral complexes. Werner's theory of complexes. In case of Werner's theory, every transition metal possesses two types of valencies. One is primary valency, variable ionizable equal to oxidation number, and secondary valency is fixed non-ionizable equal to coordination number. And primary valency is satisfied only by negative ions, while secondary valency is satisfied by either negative ions or neutral molecules. And these neutral molecules are negative ions called as ligands. Primary valency is non-directional in space, but secondary valency is due to covalent bond formation. It is directional in space and gives a definite geometry for the complex. Effective atomic number. EAN is the total number of electrons associated with the central metal atom after accepting the electrons from the ligands. So EAN is equal to Z minus X plus Y. In most of the complexes, EAN is equal to the atomic number of the nearest noble gas. Moving to valence bond theory. According to valence bond theory, the central metal atom makes availability of the empty orbitals required for hybridization, and the number of empty orbitals is always equal to its coordination number. And the d electrons in the metal atom can pair up against Hund's rule while making the empty orbitals. So this can go against Hund's rule only in presence of certain strong field ligands. Then empty orbitals formed, they undergo hybridization to form empty hybrid orbitals. These empty hybrid orbitals will overlap with full filled orbitals of donor atoms of the ligand, forming coordinate bonds. And the shape of the complex depend upon the hybridization of the central metal atom. So if it is sp3, it is going to be tetrahedron. It is dsp2, it is square planar. If it is sp3d, trigonal bipyramid, sp3d2, octahedron. So we concentrate only on octahedron and square planar complexes and tetrahedral complexes. Trigonal bipyramid complexes are very, very less. Low spin complex are inner orbital complexes. So while pairing up the electrons in presence of strong field ligand, electrons will pair up. So these are the complexes where electrons pair up against Hund's rule, and because of the pairing up, number of unpaired electron decreases. They have low magnetic moment, or sometimes they will be diamagnetic. So these complexes are called as low spin complexes. Also, in these complexes, because of electron pair up happens, inner d orbitals becomes vacant, and these inner d orbitals are used in hybridization. That's why they are also called as inner orbital complexes. So low spin complexes and inner orbital complexes more or less mean the same thing. So low spin is due to pairing of electrons, number of unpaired electron decreases, and inner orbital because inner d orbitals are involved in hybridization. The opposite is high spin and outer orbital complexes. In case of high spin, due to the presence of weak field ligand, the electrons do not pair up against Hund's rule, and they have relatively higher magnetic moment. Also, in these compounds, because pairing is not happening, inner d orbitals will not become vacant. It will use outer d orbital for hybridization. That is, the d orbitals of the outermost shell will be used for hybridization, and that's why it is called as outer orbital complexes. So these complexes generally have weak field ligands which are unable to make the electron to pair up against Hund's rule. Crystal field theory. According to crystal field theory, the interaction between the ligand and the metal is electrostatic in nature. So the completely it is taking electrostatic forces into account. The sharing of electron covalent bond nature is not at all considered. The force of attraction will lie between positively charged metal ion and the negative field of ligands. And the repulsive forces are lying between the lone pair of electrons of ligand and the d electron of the central metal atom. Due to these repulsive forces, the degeneracy of the d subshell will be lost, and the d subshell splits into two sets of orbital. The two set of orbital will be called as either T2G or EG. So this splitting is known as crystal field splitting. The crystal field splitting depends on the orientation of ligands with respect to metal ion. So how the ligands are approaching the metal atom, whether it is an octahedral field or tetrahedral field, depending on that, the splitting occurs. If I take the splitting in octahedral complexes, in case of octahedral complexes, what happens? You have a metal atom. The metal atoms are having metal atom at the origin. There are 6 directions ligands are coming. So ligands are coming along the 3 mutually perpendicular axes. So if I take the d orbitals of metal atom, so we have 2 types of d orbital. So dxy, dyz, dzx. These orbitals will have lobes in between the axes like this. And dx squared minus y squared will have this structure along the axis, and dz square will have along the z axis. So these two are having the lobes along the axis, and these 3 have the lobes along the direction which is in between the axis. Now here in octahedral complex, ligands are approaching along the axis. So as a result, these two will experience higher repulsion. This will experience relatively less repulsion. So splitting is going to happen in this way. So this is the ground state d subshell. D subshell. So when the ligands are approaching, repulsive force is going to act. So the energy of the d subshell is raised to a hypothetical level, which is called as barycenter. This is hypothetical level. From here, it actually splits. So this will be a higher energy level. This will be lower energy level. So this is dxy, dyz, dzx. This is dx squared minus y squared and dz squared. So this is the energy of the barycenter. This is energy of upper orbital. This is energy of the lower orbital. This is called as T2G. This is called as EG. Now this difference is nothing but crystal field splitting energy, which is given by 10 dq. Now this level is 6 dq plus 6 dq, and this level is minus 4 dq. So each electron entering into T2G level is stabilized by 4 dq of energy. Each electron entering to EG level will be destabilized by 6 dq of energy. So this is the crystal field splitting in case of octahedral complexes. In tetrahedral complexes, ligand will approach the central metal atom in a direction which is in between the axes. As a result, the diagram becomes completely opposite. T2G goes up, EG comes down. So this is the ground state. then rise to hypothetical level, and from there T2G goes up and EG comes down. Same thing, this is the barycenter, this is energy, this is energy, this is called as 10 dq again. This will be plus 4 dq and this will be minus 6 dq. And since in case of tetrahedral field you have only 4 ligands approaching the metal atom, in case of octahedral field 6 ligands are approaching the central metal atom, the repulsion is more in case of octahedral field compared to tetrahedral field. So the splitting is more always in case of octahedral field compared to tetrahedral field for the given pair of metal atom and ligand. So if I take this delta naught, it's also called as delta naught. So delta naught is for octahedral complex and delta T is for tetrahedral complexes. Delta naught is greater than delta T, so delta naught into 5 by 9 is equal to delta T for a given pair of metal atom and the ligands. And coming to square planar complex, in square planar complex we can assume it is similar to octahedral, but z axis is removed. So the octahedral complex, what we had all 6 directions like this. Now the z axis part is removed. So only square planar, so we are going to take only xy plane. So how the splitting happens? So here you take the same d subshell, the ground state, then hypothetical state. Now what happens, the orbital having z component will be less repelled compared to orbitals having x and y component. So the component with dz, dzx, dyz, this will be lowest, then it becomes dz square, then it is dxy, then highest is dx squared minus y squared. So like this the electrons are repelled. In these orbitals the splitting is totally different. So in square planar complex we need to know the energy order of different orbitals. So dzx and dyz have same energy, the lowest, next is dz square, then dxy, then dx squared minus y square. This is the splitting in square planar complexes. Crystal field splitting energy. The energy difference between T2G and EG level is known as crystal field splitting energy. It is different for different complexes. Strong field ligands will cause higher splitting because of repulsion being more, and weak field ligands will repel weakly and the splitting will be less. Spectrochemical series. The arrangement of various ligands in the increasing order of their crystal splitting energy is known as spectrochemical series. The one which is going to be having higher splitting energy is called as strong field ligand. The one which is having a lesser crystal field splitting will be called as weak field ligand or weak ligand. So the arrangement of these ligands in the increasing order of their splitting energy values is called as spectrochemical series. Electronic arrangement in complexes. So when the electrons are being filled in these T2G and EG, let us say first octahedral field. In case of octahedral field, we have T2G first, lowest, and then EG. So this is energy. So this is delta naught. Okay. So first electron goes here, second electron comes to second orbital, third comes to third one. So D1, D2, D3 absolutely no difference irrespective of the nature of the ligand. The fourth electron has an option either to get pair up in the T2G itself or go to EG level. That depends upon difference in delta naught and the energy required for pairing is called as pairing energy. Now if I take P is more than delta naught. So delta naught is small Okay, pairing energy is higher. If pairing energy is more than delta naught, then pairing will not take place. Electron will go to fifth and sixth. So there is no pairing of electron against Hund's rule. So this theory will tell clearly why the electron getting paired up, why the electron is not getting paired up. So if P is more than delta naught, then electron pairing will not happen. Suppose I take the same situation again, T2G and Eg. So delta naught, if delta naught is higher than pairing energy, so pairing energy requires less energy than compared to going to Eg. So first electron, second electron, third electron, fourth gets filled up, paired up, fifth get filled up, and sixth also get paired up. Only seventh electron enters the Eg level. So because of this, number of unpaired electron decreases. So the magnetic moment also going to be relatively lesser. So depending upon the delta naught and p value, electron pairing take place, electron pairing will not take place. In case of tetrahedral complexes, so Eg is down, T2G is up. Again this is delta naught, delta T. So if pairing is greater than delta T, then first, second, pairing is greater, it won't pair up, it goes to higher, 3, 4, 5. So all electrons are unpaired, no pairing takes place against Hund's rule. Same way, if I take again Eg and T2G. So delta naught, so delta T is greater than pairing energy. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth electron goes to T2G. So this is how the electron distribution takes place in complexes, whether it is strong field or weak field ligand. So number of unpaired electron differs, magnetic moment also changes. Crystal field stabilization energy. So electron going into T2G level in octahedral complex will be stabilized, and electron going to Eg level will be destabilized. So CFSE is given by, in octahedral complex, plus 4 dq, sorry, this is minus octahedral, this is plus, sorry for that. So minus 4 dq is stabilized, this is going to be destabilized. In case of tetrahedral, this will be plus, this will be minus. So plus 4 dq minus 6 dq. In case of tetrahedral complex, Eg is stabilized, T2G will be destabilized. So X and Y are number of electrons in T2G, Y is the number of electrons in Eg. Substitute, always CFSE should be negative, at the most it can be 0. And higher the crystal field stabilization energy, stability of the complex will be more. Magnetic property of the complexes, based on these concepts, we can identify the number of unpaired electrons present in the complex, and the magnetic moment is given by mu is equal to root of n into n plus 2 under root Bm, Bohr magneton, where n is the number of unpaired electrons. Complexes can be diamagnetic or paramagnetic based on number of unpaired electrons present in the given complex. So while finding out the number of unpaired electrons, we have to find out what is the D configuration of the metal atom, what is the ligand present, whether pairing happens or not. Based on that, we have to decide the number of unpaired electrons. Color property of the complex. In case of color property, you have the D subshells. If I take octahedral again, this is T2G, this is Eg. So when the light falls on the complex, the electrons present in the lower D subshell will excite to higher D subshell. So this transition absorbs certain part of radiation and the remaining part is transmitted. So color of the substance will be complementary color to the absorbed radiation. So the color is due to what is called as internal D to D electron transition. That is the reason for complexes having color property. So crystal field theory is the only theory which gives proper reason for color of the complexes, and based on the color, based on the wavelength absorbed, we can find out the splitting energy, and that's why the order of ligands is called as spectrochemical series. So color of the complex is due to internal D to D transition. The electrons present in T to G level absorb energy and exert to EG level. The color of the complex is complementary color to the absorbed radiation. Stability of the complexes. Stability of the complexes depends upon what is called a stability constant. If I take a metal atom N plus combines with first ligand gives ML N plus. Then this ML N plus combines with one more ligand gives ML2 N plus. Same way, whatever the coordination number, ML N minus 1 N plus or X minus 1 plus L will give MLX. So each one will have K1, K2, Kx. So overall reaction, if I take M plus XL gives rise to MLX N plus. So this is the overall equilibrium constant called as formation constant. So if the formation constant is higher, the complex is going to be more and more stable. So the stability will be due to strong field ligands. The strong field ligands will have a higher crystal field stabilization. So the crystal field stabilization energy will be higher. So that's why they form relatively more stable complexes. And also metals in higher oxidation state will form more stable complexes. The stability of complex generally increase from 3D to 4D metal and 4D to 5D metal. Chelating ligands like didentate, tridentate, tetradentate, which form a ring with a metal atom, they are called as chelating ligands. Higher the chelating effect, more will be the stability of the complex. So these are some of the points which will affect the stability of the complex. So more importantly, the stability constant. If the stability constant is more, the stability will be obviously high. Metal carbonyls. The metal carbonyls are the complexes where metal form a complex with carbon monoxide as the ligand. So we have FeCO5, then we have NiCO4 and Mn2CO10. Like that, all these metal carbonyls generally have metals in either zero oxidation number, or here in this complex metal can show even negative oxidation state. Metal carbonyls are quite highly stable to a concept called as synergic bonding. So we have a metal atom, you have C triple bond N as the ligand, sorry O, C triple bond O, metal carbonyls. So carbon has a lone pair, so this lone pair is given to metal through a coordinate bond, that is sigma bond. Then it has a empty pi star orbital, and this will have full filled d subshell. This overlap to form a pi bond. So this type of simultaneous bonding is called as synergic bonding. So this type of synergic bonding increases the stability of the metal carbonyls. So the metal carbonyls, the carbon donates the lone pair to form a sigma bond. The full filled d subshell will overlap with the empty pi star orbital of carbon to form a pi bond. So this type of synergic effect shorten the MC bond and longer the CO bond. So it will elongate the CO bond and MC bond becomes shorter. So higher synergic effect depends upon how many electrons are available in d subshell of central metal atom. Organometallic compounds. Organometallic compounds are compounds where carbon and metal bonds are going to be covalent. So they are sigma bonded means we have RMGX, RLI and R2CuLi, R2Zn and R2CD. These are some of the examples of sigma bonded organometallic compounds. Sigma and pi bonded, it's all now metal carbonyls. So they have both sigma character as well as pi characters. So FeCO5 same thing, Fe2CO9 is also there. So these are some of the example of sigma bonded and pi bonded metal carbonyls. Organometallics. Organometallics only pi bonded. So here we have specific example. Most important is ferrocene. In ferrocene, iron is actually sandwiched between two cyclopentadienyl anion. So when I put a circle, it's aromatic. So it understood that if there are 2 minus and Fe 2 plus. So this will be sandwich. It's called a sandwich complex. So the electrons are donated only through pi bonds. So the pi electron cloud of one ring and pi electron cloud of other ring are sandwiching the iron. So these are the organometallics only pi bonded. There is no sigma bond characteristics for this particular molecule. So these are the points for coordination compounds. Now we'll move on to the last unit, that is biomolecules. Biomolecules, these are the molecules which play an important role in biological activity. So we have carbohydrates, amino acids and proteins and nucleic acids to be discussed. So what exactly are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are polyhydroxy derivatives of aldehydes and ketones. These are classified into monosaccharides, oligosaccharides which include di, tri, tetrasaccharides, etc. up to nanosaccharides and polysaccharides. Glucose. So monosaccharide glucose, the open chain structure given by Fischer. So it's going to be CHO, COH, H, CHOH, COH, H, COH, H, CH2OH. This is D-glucose. This is the open chain structure of glucose as per the Fischer for projection formula. So the open chain structure had certain objection. One of the main objection was mutarotation. So the change in the optical rotation of a substance with time is known as mutarotation. There are two isomers of D-glucose are isolated. So these two isomers are spontaneously interconvert from one to another in solution. These isomers are called as alpha, beta, alpha D-glucose and beta D-glucose. So if I take the freshly prepared sample of alpha or beta D-glucose, they change their optical rotation with the time because they are reaching an equilibrium mixture. So this concept of mutarotation could not be explained by the open chain structure, and the existence of two isomers are also not explained. So to overcome this, the ring structure has been proposed. In ring structure, the fifth OH group, fifth carbon OH groups and forms an acetal, hemiacetal structure with the aldehyde. So aldehyde group now becomes OH, H, COH, H. The third carbon atom H to the right, OH to the left. Fourth carbon again OH to the right, H to the left. Fifth carbon H and CH2OH. The oxygen is going to be bonded to carbon. This is alpha D glucose. So if the OH and H are interchanged, you get beta D glucose. So the configuration differs at C1. They are called as anomers. So this carbon is called as anomeric carbon. Okay, that's the ring structure of glucose. The same ring structure can also be given in the form of Havar structures. So if I write the Havar structure, this is alpha D glucose. So whatever is to the right, we written in the bottom OHH, second also OHH, third one is HOH, fourth one again OH and H, fifth one always CH2OH on top, H at the bottom. This is alpha D glucose. So you can clearly see hemiacetal structure. This is anomeric carbon. So if I write OH on top and H at the bottom, I get beta D glucose. Fructose. Fructose is a ketohexose. If I write fructose structure, open chain structure, CH2OH, C double bond O, third carbon atom onwards, absolutely same as glucose. Now in fructose, there are two types of rings formed. One is pyranose ring, one is furanose ring. So what happens is COH, ketone is the first one. So I am writing CH2OH to the left, C, 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 C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I am forming a ring with the 5-membered ring. So this is the ring which is going to be formed. So the 1, 2, this is third one H to the right, OH to the left, then OH, H, this is H, this is again CH2OH. This is one ring. One more ring is, both are alpha I am writing. So join to the sixth carbon. H, OH, 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 H, H. This is pyranose. This is furanose. So two types of ring structures are known for fructose. Same way we can write two types of Haworth formula. So Haworth formula will also write here. Haworth formula for 5-membered we write like this. So OH down for alpha, CH2OH up. This is H, OH, OH, H, H, CH2, OH. This is alpha D fructofuranose. Same way pyranose, 6-membered ring, right like this. So OH, CH2OH, HOH, OH, H, OH, H. The last one will have only 2 hydrogen atoms. This is the Haworth structure for fructose. In case of galactose, the difference between glucose and galactose is the 4th carbon atom. In case of galactose, CHO, COH, H. Third one is also same. Fourth one also have to make HOH as it is. Fifth one will be like this. This is open chain structure of galactose. If I take ring structure of galactose, I'll write the Haworth structure directly. So first one same OH, H. Second one also OH, H. Third one HOH. Fourth one also HOH. Fifth one is CH2OH and H. The only difference between glucose and fructose galactose is 4th carbon atom. So such molecules are called as epimers. So glucose and galactose are epimers. Structure of sucrose. Sucrose is made of alpha D glucose and beta D fructose. So alpha D glucose unit I'll write on top. OH, H, OH, H, H, OH, OH, H, CH2OH and H. The beta D fructose furanose ring, 5-membered ring, I'll write here. It is beta. So CH2OH down, OH up, H, OH, OH, H. This will be CH2OH and H. Now these two OH to be eliminating one water molecules. So if I eliminate one water molecule, join these two by oxygen, that is called as glycosidic bond. So if I remove water, so I just have to join by one oxygen atom. So this will be called as glycosidic bond. So disaccharides are joining with two monosaccharide units with a glycosidic bond. In sucrose, we have what is called as beta glycosidic link. Maltose. Maltose is an intermediate obtained during hydrolysis of starch. Starch is having only alpha D glucose. So alpha D glucose 2 units I have to write. So H, I'll write OH later. HOH, OHH, CH2OH, H. Same way, I read other one. OH, H, OH, H, HOH. This is H, this is CH2OH, H. So I have one OH here in the fourth carbon. So this OH both are removing one water molecule joined by oxygen. So this is known as alpha glycosidic link. So this is going to be structure of maltose. Structure of lactose. Lactose obtained by glucose and galactose. So glucose can be alpha or beta, but galactose to be always alpha. So I'll write galactose unit first, OH, H, beta D D galactose, beta, so OH, H, HOH, HOH, CH2OH, H. If I take alpha or beta, it doesn't matter. So if I take alpha, OH, OH, H, HOH, OH, H, CH2OH, H. This is glucose. This is galactose. So now these two are eliminated, water molecule. So they are linked by oxygen through opposite configuration. So this will be beta link. Beta link. So I have to remove the water molecules and join them through oxygen atom. Starch. Starch is a storage polysaccharide in plants. Starch has two components, amylose, water soluble component, and a linear polymer. Amylopectin is water insoluble component and branched polymer. So this is basically a polymer of only alpha D glucose unit with C1 to C4 glycosidic bond, and the branching happens with C1 to C6 glycosidic bond. The partial structure can be as follows. So if I take two chains, I'll write. So this is one oxygen, this is another molecule, So the chain is running like this. So this is sixth carbon atom, CH2OH. So this will be joining to first carbon of the second link. Like this, the two chains are branched. This is C1 to C6 link, and this is C1 to C4 link. Okay, so each chain will run for around 20 to 24 units, and the branching takes place with C1 to C6 linkage. All other groups will remain as it is. There is no change in the other groups. So I am not writing the other groups. All groups HOH will remain same. This is a partial representation for structure of starch. Glycogen. Glycogen is also a storage polysaccharide in animals. If we take excess glucose, the glucose is converted to glycogen and stored in the liver. It has a similar structure to amylopectin and more branched than amylopectin. So amylopectin and starch has glycogen has absolutely same structure, but in amylopectin the branching takes place after every 6 to 8 glucose units. Amino acids. The amino acids are the organic compound having NH2 group and COH group attached to same carbon atom. The general structure of amino acid is given by RCHNH2COOH. So depending upon the R structure, we have various amino acids. Naturally occurring, we have 20 amino acids. We need to know the structure of 20 amino acids. What are the structure of R group? It should be remembered. So there are 20 naturally occurring amino acids which are building blocks for protein, and out of these some of them are called as essential amino acids which are not produced in the body and have to be taken in the food diet. And non-essential amino acids are produced in the body, may or may not be present in the food diet. So out of 20 we have around 9 to 10 essential amino acids, and remaining 10 are going to be non-essential amino acids. Zwitter ion. So amino acid having NH2 group and COH group, they can transfer a proton intramolecularly. So RCH, NH2 can become NH3 plus, and carboxylic acid becomes COO minus. This is called as Zwitter ion. So Zwitter ion will exist at a particular pH in the medium, and that pH is called as isoelectric pH. So the pH of the medium at which amino acid exists as a Zwitter ion, and when you pass electric current, because of the charge is zero, they do not migrate either to cathode or to the anode. The isoelectric pH is always calculated by using two pK values. So isoelectric pH is equal to pKa1 plus pKa2 by 2. That's the formula. Peptide bond. When two amino acids are condensed, they are held by CONH bond known as peptide bond. A dipeptide will contain two amino acid and one peptide bond. If it is tripeptide, three amino acid and two peptide bonds, and so on. So di-tri, etc. Refers to amino acid molecules, not to the peptide bonds. Polypeptides and proteins. When a large number of amino acids condense together to form a molecule, have a large molecular mass, and also have large number of peptide bonds known as polypeptide. A polypeptide with molecular mass more than 10,000 unit is regarded as protein. So all proteins are polypeptides, but all polypeptides are not proteins. So structure of proteins. So protein is characterized by four types of structure. That is primary structure. It indicates the sequence of amino acid in the polypeptide chain, and the secondary structure indicating the 3D structure of the polypeptide chain. That is either alpha helical structure or beta pleated sheets. So alpha helical structure and beta pleated sheets are stabilized by hydrogen bonding, and hydrophobic forces, and as well as disulfide linkages. The tertiary structure refers to 3D orientation of the polypeptide chain, whether the chain is coiled and chain is folded, or protein folding, protein coiling will be indicated by the tertiary structure. The quaternary structure will indicate the relative 3D arrangement of different polypeptide chains with respect to each other. If there are more than one polypeptide chain, how individually these polypeptide chains are oriented with respect to each other will be given by quaternary structure. Denaturation of proteins. When proteins are subjected to high temperature or treated with a strong acid or alkali, it loses all its secondary, tertiary and quaternary structure, and also it loses its biological activity. But the primary structure will not be altered during denaturation. The best example is boiling of egg, not milk, boiling of egg. So egg white, whatever is there, it is going to be highly protein content, but when you boil it becomes hard. So it loses the 3D orientation, it loses the 3D structure of the polypeptide chain, and it becomes hard. But the amino acid sequence in the polypeptide chain is not changed. Nucleic acids. So nucleic acids are the biomolecules responsible for carrying genetic information from one generation to the other. As we know, there are two types, there are DNA and RNA. So the components of nucleic acid, we have nitrogen bases, pentose sugar unit and phosphate group. There are two types of nitrogen bases, they are pyrimidine bases and purine bases. Purine bases are adenine and guanine. Pyrimidine bases are cytosine, uracil and thymine. The basic structure of purine and pyrimidine is given as. So it's all heterocyclic compound with nitrogen in the structure. So this is a basic structure. From this we can derive the structures of pyrimidine nitrogen bases. So these are the structures of nitrogen bases. Adenine will have one NH2 group addition to the purine structure. In case of guanine, that NH2 become OH. Between two nitrogen, we have to put one NH2 group. So adenine and guanine, we can remember like that. Uracil, you make the double bond as single bond, enolize two keto group, one between the two nitrogen, one next to the nitrogen. Uracil, if you put one methyl group to uracil, it becomes thymine, and change one of the O to NH2 group, it becomes cytosine. So if you know uracil, you can get the structure of cytosine and thymine. So this is broadly you have to remember the structure of nitrogen bases. Nucleoside. So nucleoside is formed by the combination of a nitrogen base and the pentose sugar. So if I take adenine and pentose sugar, I get adenosine. Guanine and pentose sugar become guanosine. That is ribose sugar we use. Pentose sugar is ribose sugar. Thymine and ribose sugar become thymidine. Uracil and pentose sugar will become uridine. Cytosine and pentose sugar become cytidine. If I want to use DNA and nucleic acids, then it is deoxyribose sugar. So all these word will be added with deoxy as the prefix. It will be deoxyadenosine, deoxyguanosine, deoxythymidine, deoxycytidine and so on. Then nucleotide. Nucleotide is a molecule obtained by the combination of nucleoside and a phosphate unit. So adenosine monophosphate, adenosine triphosphate, ATP, ADP, these are all called as nucleotides. When large number of nucleotides held together to form a polymeric chain, they are called as polynucleotides. And polynucleotides are nothing but the nucleic acid, that is RNA and DNA. Structure of DNA. So structure of DNA, there is a double helical structure. It is known as Watson and Crick model. The double helical structure is characterized or stabilized by means of hydrogen bonds. There is a specific base pairing. Adenine and thymine, they are held by 2 hydrogen bonds, and guanine and cytosine are held by 3 hydrogen bonds. So wherever adenine is there, thymine should be there in the other strand, and guanine wherever is there, and cytosine should be there in the other strand. So the number of adenine and guanine units in one strand should be equal to the number of units of thymine and cytosine in the other units. So easily the replication can happen. One strand can synthesize the complementary strand very easily with the same structure. So that is the structure of DNA. What is the biological importance of DNA? The main thing is to carry genetic information from one generation to another through DNA replication, and also to control and direct the protein synthesis process. So what is protein synthesis? In protein synthesis there are three steps. First is transcription. The code of the protein synthesis is transcribed from DNA to RNA. When the nitrogen base sequence is given from DNA to RNA, RNA will read in the different way. Adenine is read as uracil, guanine is read as cytosine, thymine is read as adenine, cytosine is read as guanine. Suppose in DNA I have a sequence like A, G, T, C, A, G, T, T, A, C. Now what will happen for this is a DNA strand. What is read by RNA? The transcription goes like this: A becomes U, G becomes C, T become A, C will be G, A will be U, G, C, A, U, G. This is the code taken by RNA. That is transcription. Then translation. The translation will be done. The code received by mRNA will be translated into triplet code for amino acids. So there are totally 4 amino acids and 4 nitrogen bases and 20 natural amino acids to be mapped. So we required a triplet code. 4 cube 64 codes are applicable. A total of 64 codes are available and 20 amino acids to be mapped. So more than one code can map to the same amino acid. So whatever the code given by mRNA to prepare the protein, so those amino acids are brought by tRNA from various parts of the body, and RNA will provide the synthesis site for protein synthesis. This is how protein synthesis is executed by RNA and controlled by DNA. Okay, so these are the synopsis points what I wanted to discuss. So we'll be discussing some questions in all the 3 chapters. Thank you.